Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with talented jazz flutist, composer, and educator Andrea Brachfeld. Over the course of our interview, she talked about growing up in New York and how she acquired a love of music. Over her career, she has consistently been a favorite with the critics, and that includes her latest 2015 album called Lotus Blossom. She grew up getting expert flute instruction from the greats like Jimmy Heath and Hubert Laws. She spent some quality time at Venezuela, plenty of years in the classroom, and is now teaching the future students of jazz. She has an interesting jazz story full of wisdom and great tales. Please dig this interview, my friends.
Nice to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you for taking some time to talk with me today. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and dive right in here, and I kind of want to get an idea of what's going on with you lately as far as activity, just kind of a snapshot of what's been going on.
My last CD was released in October, and I think, it was in September I got the Best Jazz Flute Award from Hot House, which was a total surprise. That was really nice. And then I went to Cuba in December to play the festival. Then in February I went to Canada to do a couple gigs and workshops and stuff like that. That was pretty wonderful. And then I came back to get an email that I got a 4-star review in Downbeat.
Right on. That's nice.
That was like, wow, that was so nice.
Yeah. Well, let me go on a quick offshoot here. That had to be an amazing feeling after all of the years that we have not been, kind of diplomatically dealing with Cuba to go over and play. What was that experience like?
It was good. I mean, I've been actually going to Cuba, Joe, since 2000.
Okay.
So that was about my 10th time over there since then. You know, the musicians in Cuba are just amazing. There's a lot of motivation to be amazing. The resources they have are very limited, so they're very focused on becoming great musicians. But the poverty is very difficult to bear. It's very difficult to deal with. I mean, when you're a tourist, you have everything you need, pretty much as you can in Cuba. But the people don't have it. And I have some very close friends who live there, Cubans, and it's a little difficult to watch, But the music is amazing, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. Your critically acclaimed album, Lotus Blossom, talk to me a little bit about how this album came about, kind of the creative energy that went into it.
Bill O'Connell, I asked Bill to be my producer on my last record before this, Lady of the Island, with Zoho Music, and that worked out really well because he and I just really work well together. It's just a very nice symbiotic relationship, and he's, of course, an amazing musician, so I've known him for a long, long time, so that was really a wonderful collaboration. Rufus I met on at Ali Ryerson's big band recording, the jazz flute big band.
Yeah.
And he was just he's like a teddy bear, He's a jazz teddy bear.
Nice.
Very honored to have him play with me. He commented something about my playing at that session, and I decided, let me find out if he would be into playing with me. And he was just so open, and I know he's pretty particular about who he plays with, so it was really pretty wonderful. And then Winard runs this jam session in Jersey City every Friday, and I heard about that, so I started going, and we started collaborating with some stuff. So that was an easy request, does he want to be on my CD? So, and the three of them really worked well together. I was actually thinking about what we look like, because Bill is like 6'5", and Winard is like, 5'5", and then you've got, Rufus, big old Rufus, and little old me. But the music is, they're just all ears, and that's what I'm about these days, is just really listening to each other and supporting each other on the bandstand. And they actually came out they came to a rehearsal in the city when it was, after a snowstorm, and then the two subsequent basic recording days, there were also snowstorms, and they came out. I was surprised. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
Let me go back some years in your life here. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Utica, New York, but I was pretty much raised in Spring Valley, New York.
Okay.
In Rockland County until I was 13. Then we went to France for a year and lived in Paris. Then came back and moved to the Village, and that's when I started going to the High School of Music and Art.
What was it about your childhood specifically that really got you involved in music and more specifically jazz?
That's a good question. I started taking piano lessons when I was 6. My teacher told my mother that I had a lot of rhythm and that I would be able to play jazz, but I was certainly not conscious of it. I never heard jazz unless you could call, like, listening to those cartoons. Remember? Wonderful cartoons.
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, I used to say that I didn't hear jazz growing up, but I think I did because I really, watched all those cartoons, Top Cat and Betty Boop and all that stuff. And then when I was 10, I took up the flute, but it was just very natural for me to play, and I wasn't encouraged or discouraged to play. It was just like, do you want to go to dance school? Do you want to go to Hebrew school? Do you want to take lessons? It was just like something you did,
Yeah.
So, but I think the role of music in my life throughout my life has taken on a lot of different meanings of creating a world where there's harmony, where nobody can touch me. Just a lot of different transformations. Music's a very powerful art, and you do it by yourself. So it's a lone journey. The deeper you go inside, it becomes more social. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy,
Yeah, absolutely. That is a very interesting spin. Let me say in 1969, you go to the High School of Music and Art, and you get to play with Nat Adderley Jr., and a whole host of other folks. What was that like on your music brain at that age to get that kind of experience?
Well, I'll tell you honestly, I was very nervous and introverted in high school. So although, I would jam with these guys, I really never felt too comfortable. Noel Pointer was going to the High School of Music and Art, and we used to hang out with, I don't know if you know Frankie Centeno.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Frankie and Hector, his brother who plays guitar, and Paul Kimbrough, Paulie?
Yes.
We used to go to Gregory Coverdale's house every weekend and jam. And it was just, it was a little scary for me. I was hearing the music, and I was going to Jazzmobile, and I was studying with Jimmy Heath, but I never felt very secure. I didn't feel secure during those days. But I guess the music was in me. I got a great review in Downbeat when I did this concert with Jazzmobile. I don't know why he wrote what he wrote, but because I had no idea what I was doing. I was just playing by ear,
Right.
I guess it's in there someplace, It's been an interesting journey.
I would say so. Well, those Jazzmobile workshops sound like they were very cool. I mean, you had, obviously Jimmy Heath, Billy Taylor. That had to be a great experience.
Yeah, Jimmy was great. Jimmy was just like, stay in my class, learn what I'm teaching. Billy Taylor had done some really amazing things for me in my life, as well as so many other people. I mean, he was just like this jazz angel, He got me involved in the CETA, the Comprehensive Education Training Act. It was a grant that Jazzmobile got in about 70, let's see, because I went to Venezuela in 79, 80. So it had to be like 78. And he actually found me as a cashier at Sam Goody's, and he was on my line, and he looked up. He said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm trying to make some money." He said, you're supposed to be playing music. So he hooked me up with CETA, and I was like the leader. He said, "We're looking for a leader. Just go here, tell them who you are, play a couple notes, and you're in. I said, okay, So that was amazing. And Jimmy, I've been friends with Jimmy, since I started, taking lessons with him at Jazzmobile. But it was interesting. It was Saturday mornings. I would go up there by myself, and sometimes it was challenging, because there weren't a lot of Caucasian people. It was mostly black people. But I've found that that's pretty much my MO, throughout my life. And I play my flute, and then all the barriers seem to, melt away. So that's a good thing. And
that is.
It continues to happen that way. I had an experience with Bill Saxton. He was so funny. He was just so hard knocks, and
yeah.
He was really challenging me, and I was like, whatever. So, just played, and he came up, and he kind of on the side, he goes, hey, that was beautiful,
That's great. Speaking of the School of Hard Knocks, you've obviously had plenty of experience out in the world, but at the Manhattan School of Music, what did you learn in that kind of formal environment? How did that help your music mentality, so to speak?
Well, Manhattan provided a really nurturing environment for me to study and practice. I took my classes very, very seriously. I think I was practicing 8 hours a day at that point. I was also involved with the Valerie Capers Ensemble and Dave Friedman Ensemble. A lot of really heavy cats were, in those ensembles. It was just this ongoing, process of learning how to play jazz, really, and I was also, during that period, I was working a lot as a Latin musician, which I was really grateful for, because that's pretty much what paid my way to live for all that time and to go to school. So it was just so many experiences. And also during that time, there was so much jazz going on, all the loft jazz in New York City. I lived in the back of Sam Rivers' place, Studio Rivby. I could just get on my bike and just go to hear jazz. Joanne Brackeen was playing at the Circade, for $25 a night. Boomers, Lugs, these places, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just I'd go to school, I'd practice, get on my bike at 11 and just go hang and sit in, and got all these amazing musicians,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, along with the Latin flavor of music and the jazz, I want to ask you about that 2.5 years that you spent in Venezuela. What was that like?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I really didn't want to go because I had just finished playing. I had just finished doing that year with CETA, with Jazzmobile, and Johnny, Gary, and I were kind of planning the next group, but, you couldn't repeat. So I got a group together, and then I couldn't go. So I was just going to go to Venezuela for a month, and then I signed a contract, and I ended up doing this strange music gig. I call it strange because it was really, it wasn't jazz at all. It was some improvisation, but not really jazz, but it was a whole lot of money. And I met a lot of people because being in Venezuela, a lot of people would come through, and so I would meet people I would not normally meet. But after that year, I got a gig at this place called the Juan Sebastian Bar, and I played for 8 months. I played 6 nights a week. I played jazz, so that was pretty wonderful. It really moved my chops up a couple of levels, and then I started recording a lot of jingles, radio and TV jingles. Then I met my first husband and got pregnant and came back.
And then it mentioned that you had kind of focused on family life for quite a while before you got back into music. Talk to me about that decision.
Well, I guess, when you have kids, you either go one way or the other. You either become more narcissistic or not, I think, in my case anyway. And although I was still playing, I was pretty much under the radar because my daughter was really, my focus. I just wanted to provide for her and be a good mother, and didn't get a lot of support from outside people and family. So I pretty much had to figure out how to do this on my own. So I decided to go back to school and became a teacher. And I'm glad I did, because I'm now in a position where I can do a lot of things that I see other people can't, because I did teach for those 25 years.
Sure.
I don't know if you have to struggle to be a great musician. I mean, financially, I don't know if you have to do that. I think that there's enough struggle just like living every day, and that pretty much does the trick. If you need to struggle to be a musician, then I pretty much have that down pat.
Well, and obviously your struggles worked out well. You've gotten a lot of great reviews, and you've won a lot of awards. So let me ask you this. Not a favorite award, but what award did you get, or maybe even a review that kind of blew you away? You were like, wow, I did not expect that.
Well, pretty much the one from Hot House. I mean, I didn't even know they gave out awards. So when I got this message in Facebook Messenger, I actually thought it was like, spam. So I was going to delete it, and then I started to really read it, and I was like, wow, really? So, and I had actually, it was an interesting meeting. I met Gwen Kelly when her name was Gwen Kelly, the owner of Hot House. I'd gone to this just performance on the Upper East Side in East Harlem, and she ended up sitting next to me, and I didn't know who she was, but I heard her accent, and I said, oh, do you speak French? And she said, yes. So we started speaking French, and we had a really friendly conversation. And then I noticed all these people were coming up to her, and I said, well, who are you? And she said, oh, I just own Hot House magazine. I was like, okay. That happens to me a lot. So that was a total surprise. And then when I saw who I was up against, Don Braden, Lou Tabakin, and Jamie Baum, I was like, hey, this is nice that at least, I got nominated. And then when I won, I was like, really? I really couldn't believe it. That was a real surprise. So I think that really affected me. And then the Downbeat review, that was really nice. I mean, it's nice to know you're getting reviewed, but then you start thinking, gee, I wonder what they're going to say,
Absolutely. Well, and the one thing that I've noticed that's been pretty steady in your life is that you've had a lot of great educators. Is there one in particular that you've had, not your favorite or your best, but somebody that really imparted advice on a regular basis that kind of roils around your head on a regular basis?
Yeah, I would say Mike Longo. I studied harmony and piano with him for a couple of years, and he really opened my ears. He really helped a lot. So I would say Mike, yeah.
And, with all these great teachers that you've had, what has been your teaching philosophy with students that you have?
Oh, my whole thing is to transcribe. You listen to, there's a lot of memorization, so you have to eat well, so your body has a lot of healthy neurons. A lot of brain power, so you really have to take care of your body and eat well so you can transcribe, because it takes a lot of brain power, a lot of memorization. Playing jazz is you have to have all this stuff at your fingertips, so I pretty much use the conscious, subconscious, and superconscious levels of brain levels, brain power, and then you extract, different parts of the solo and analyze it and see where it's going harmonically, where it came from, where it is, where it's going, put it through the 12 keys, because it's all about vocabulary. So when you get up on the bandstand, you're not thinking. You're in your superconscious state, and you're just focusing on, bringing as much emotion into the music as possible, whatever that emotion is at that moment. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be just joy. It could be anything and everything.
Sure.
Because I really believe in the Louis Armstrong philosophy of, we are entertainers. We are entertaining people. It's not a narcissistic art form, and I don't think it ever should be, although it's narcissistic in nature because of the amount of alone time that you have to experience. But then once you go out there, it really should be about, reaching people. So that's really my purpose.
Yeah. So you've learned from what the world would consider so many jazz legends. You played with so many folks. But who would you consider your jazz heroes?
My jazz heroes. Well, definitely Coltrane, Wayne Shorter, Wallace Roney, Wynton Kelly. There's so many guys. I'm involved in this wonderful project with Wallace right now. We're going to be recording Wayne Shorter's music that he wrote for Miles. I don't know if you heard about it, the Universe Orchestra. So it's music that was never recorded, and just being around, Lenny White and Buster Williams and Wallace and Steve Turre and just all these guys, it's a vibrational, high,
Let me ask you this. Why do you love jazz?
I love jazz because, first of all, I love the sound of jazz. I love the harmony. I love the sound of jazz is so beautiful, I love the challenge of, being able to play it and play it well. And I like the characteristics of the constant movement, the constant change, because I get bored, so it's nice and things are changing all the time. And you're just, it's a very spiritual thing for me, because when you get in the zone, it's like I could be really sick, and then I play and I completely forget about everything. So it's very healing as well. So I guess that's what I love about jazz. Yeah, about the improvisation.
Let me ask you this. What is the greatest thing about waking up every day?
Waking up.
And let me ask you this. Everybody has their version of who you are. Your family does, your friends do, your business associates, the fans you play for. But who do you think you are?
I think I'm very complex, although I'm always trying to move into being simple. I think I'm very sensitive and very serious, but can be very playful. I think I'm very different from most people because of my spiritual path and the kinds of food I eat and the way that I live my life. I've pretty much always done this, but I haven't always shared it with people because, when I was developing as a musician, everybody else was doing lots of drugs, and I didn't. So I was into my spiritual thing, and nobody really understood it. There weren't a lot of people around at that time that I seemed to be around. So I would say I'm just different from most people, but the same as many different people.
That's cool. I like that. I like that answer. And you've obviously made a very profound impact on the world of jazz. And I want to ask you this. You're far from being over, but I want to ask you, when they peel back the pages of jazz history and they come across your name, what do you want the history of jazz to remember you by?
Just, I guess, my voice and how I made people feel when I played. And hopefully I inspire people, and that I have inspired people, especially young women, to speak their voice and be strong, assertive, not aggressive, assertive. And, I hope people can learn to not be afraid of being who they are, and just be themselves, regardless of, anything anybody says, oh, you're just a flute player, or, whatever, So I think, I think that's how I feel, yeah.
Perfect. Hey, thank you for taking some time out and giving me your story today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Andrea for her time, her music, and her story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit the neonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.